Hello everybody.
Numbers drag it along. They write their books, shake their hands,
Play that
watch
a
it
little
sink
bit.
into the sand. Call it heat, call it tide, call it anything but the crime. The blob don't burn.
That's such a great opening. It's called The Scientists and Their Blob. I didn't put a link in, my apologies. I'll try to fix that in a few minutes here. A rather unexpected show. I wasn't going to do a show tonight. We've been pushing it pretty hard. And just give me a second. It always takes a second. So what you're looking at is 100 scientific leaders. And this is a really important, really interesting story. We're going to jump right into it. And you'll figure it out quite quick, I'm sure. Just to remind this entire planet, this was a Neptunium-239 dispersal. This decays to plutonium-239. There was also a 237 with a 1.1 million year, very radioactive stuff. And Neptunium-239 turns into plutonium after 2.5 days. So after 25 days with 10 decays. There was also a plutonium model. This was the Fukushima 20-day models. In that same period, there was 100 million atoms per square meter of disposition radioactive fallout on the ground, Canada, United States, of xenon-133, 135. Ran with 20 million particles of radioactive iodine-131 per liter fell in the United States post-Fukushima. These are absurd numbers, by the way. And there's 10 times more 132 in the same sample, the same liter. There's 30 times more iodine-133 in that same liter, and 31 times more iodine-129 in that same liter, which was another study out of Ottawa, Canada. The iodine-132, 133 are 9 times more effective at ionizing and radiating thyroid glands of all the species in humans worldwide, and it did, because there was so much of it. And it wasn't just iodine, of course. It was neptunium and plutonium, heavy plutonium. In Japan itself, 240 kilometers away, was 500 trillion atoms a kilogram. Significant consequences for humans, but also the species. And in about 10 minutes, we'll get back to that song, and I'm going to show you some of my research expeditions and why that's important to what's happening at Davos right now. 500 trillion atoms. Now, so a BQ is a Becquerel, that's a pulse of energy in every direction. For that to happen, you need an isotope. So 500 trillion isotopes per kilogram. Then multiply that by 66.6 to get a square meter. These are absurd numbers. These are forever numbers. These will never go away. And they're catastrophic damage to the health of every species. Now, we've seen that play out. All the studies are showing, and actual documentation is showing, the radioactive fallout covering the planet in less than 30 days. The German government's model of just cesium-137 only in the Pacific Ocean, you got to appreciate the entire planet was contaminated immediately within 30 days. And so by proxy, so was all the water, all the oceans. This was a French study, 2013, 954 days later, you're talking about significant contamination that is, it'll be here long past everybody currently on the planet is dead and gone. Radiation levels in the United States West Coast spiked to over 1 million times normal. This was the French government of a spike. This was a spike. This was not a projection. This was not a hypothesis. This was a spike. This was radioactive fallout itself. Now, they're only acknowledging the French government, IRSN, cesium-137. And their model looks, their spike, when they put it into their model maker, is 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. This is now approaching 20 days right here. That's 20 days of radioactive fallout of cesium-137 at 1 million to 10 million atoms. What that means is every species thyroid glands, because that's a gamma, remember. So you have all these different isotopes, all this different documentation, all of it 100% true. You have all these different isotopes in the same plumes. So all the water, stop pretending, all the water, everything was contaminated, all the land masses, but all freshwater, all saltwater, the oxygen, the soil. So every species' thyroid glands were saturated. So you can't just have that without every species, including humans, all 8 million species, producing radioactive stem cells from the betas and the alphas, right? The strontium, uranium, the plutonium, the curium, which is the biggest byproduct of the radioactive fuel rods. All right, we're almost there. Here we go. All of that from 4 reactors that we got incontestable evidence. Right, it's unassailable documentation. And what they've done to the homeless and destitute and victims of society in order to pretend that this didn't happen is just unconscionable. These are not people. And what's going on with Reactor 6, that it was pixelated out in the pictures that were released after a decade, is very questionable. So was the turbine building, so was the vent for the fuel pool, because the fuel pool is always splitting atoms, so you have to release it or you have a buildup, a displacement that could turn very volatile very quickly. And the common span fuel pool, which was around 11 million pounds of reactor cores, clearly was compromised. And what you're looking behind it is transport trucks that were stacked up with the tsunami. This is Reactor 4. It was just across the street. It's a lower building with windows down low. The tsunami came right through this. And the only reason you would pixelate out all of this would be because you had a catastrophic event on top of a catastrophic event. As for context, Reactor 4 is right there. It would have been, to this way, across the street, would have been a common span fuel pool. So there's much, each of the buildings, of course, had 8 reactor cores at the top of them and 2 fuel pools. So you're talking about 8 fuel pools with approximately a total of 36 reactor cores, each of them equal to 100 Chernobyls. Each reactor core of the 36 reactor cores that were lost. Now they're claiming that they're on top of the building and everything is hunky-dory, but clearly that's not true. And now we're 15 years down the road and we're seeing all the species of severe emaciation that we've never ever imagined. This is post-Fukushima events that are undeniable now. This is undeniable. The gray whales will be gone by next year. All of them are emaciated that are around. There's 13,000 of them. There's over 7,000 humpback whales by 2016 that starved to death because we broke the food chain from all that radioactive fallout. Okay. The whale up there is missing 360,000 pounds, the blue whale. There's maybe 20,000 pounds. There should weigh 380,000 pounds. The bronze whale should weigh around 90,000 pounds. It weighs around 1,800 pounds. I couldn't determine what this was. This was a story from India recent. And of course, the humpback and sperm whales were seeing severe, unbelievable emaciation, shoulder blades, peanut heads, spinal column defined, rib cages defined. So the poll tonight, I got spammed on it right away, is, bear with me, is 100 scientific self-appointed leaders convening in Davos to shape a global decision-making. Is that terrorism? And you see the incredible, brutal censorship against anybody with a voice, anybody with any common sense whatsoever. And these people, what was really interesting was there was no news stories in my search engine whatsoever, only from the official website, just one. Right? It was this story here. There was no other references whatsoever. So I guess there's no dissenting voices. The AI is so good now, nobody's allowed to have a conversation. So it's just total censorship. 100 scientific leaders, and I'll show you why coming up in about 5 minutes. 100 scientific leaders convene in Davos to shape global decisions. So if you tell these people you're there to shape 100 or the global decisions, they think they start to believe that they're gods and that what they're doing, they have the moral high ground or something, right? They become disillusioned with themselves. Now all of a sudden they're going to make a decision that affects 8 billion people and 8 million species. And that's quite the power trip. And I'll show you these people coming up in a minute. And I'll show you why they chose them too. As scientific breakthroughs accelerate, too many remain disconnected from policy, capital, and institutions that govern their impact. Institutions. You need a global referendum for what they're talking about doing. Instead, they got 100 of the so-called lapdogs for whatever World Economic Forum and everybody else. Frontier Science House, though, is a pretty big player. It's designed to close the gap, creating a dedicated space where evidence informs decisions. Well, what about the evidence I'm going to show you in a few minutes, I wonder? And does that matter? Does the evidence, if the evidence matters, you better stick around and watch it. And science carries weight in the boardroom. Science in the boardroom. So, like, you're talking about 100 people making decisions that they don't have a right to make. They don't have any right whatsoever to even think for 1 second that they have that right. That they're going to form the policies that control everybody on the planet and every species is delusional chicken eggs. They grew up as chicken eggs. They were chicken eggs as teenagers. Young adults, they were still chicken eggs. They wouldn't leave the university. They kept getting degrees. And finally, they got sucked up by evil organizations like the World Economic Forum, or became just like they're good-looking people, well-dressed, taken care of, very healthy. They grew up in a very luxurious environment. That doesn't mean they have a moral high ground at all. It means they're disconnected from how the world really works. The program will feature more than 50 sessions across open science, health, climate, technology, governance. CEOs, government ministers, Nobel laureates, heads of international organizations, university presidents, leading researchers, not people like me who've done the actual field studies themselves with no funding whatsoever. And innovators, well, I'm an innovator, will convene at an unprecedented scale without the plebes, but only the inbreeds of the inbreeds. I'll show you them. Actually, we were fortunate enough to put their pictures up for me and you. Placing science on equal footing with economics during a week that defines global priorities. During a week defines global priorities. So clearly, they want to create. Think of a dirty house, and you go in, you start putting everything in this place, that place, where you like it, not where the homeowners like it. And you move on to the next home, you do the same thing. It's going to change everything the way you like it, but not the way the homeowners like it. But then because you don't have to, you're not doing that, you're going to do it on a piece of paper with an AI and a few other fancy explore how foundational breakthroughs in biology are moving from the laboratory to real-world decision-making. So you want to control those. The race to harness AI, which has drove up the electricity prices for all the people who created the infrastructure in the first place. And accelerate drug discovery when a majority of illnesses and diseases can be eliminated by closing down the nuclear industry. Just the nuclear waste that gets thrown into your local garbage facilities and burnt in your incinerators of exit signs, the tritium-3H, and the smoke detectors with americium-241 is enough to poison everybody on the planet and every species on its own. And that's the reason that is happening is because organizations like this exist. CEO of one of the world's biggest pharmaceutical companies, the president of Microsoft Global Affairs. You can see, and we got some pictures coming up. We'll do this more justice. Senior European policy leaders are going to make decisions for people in North America. Space agencies are going to be making decisions for everybody on the planet. The heads of this and the heads of these global that and the heads of the globalists. I mean, they're completely disenfranchised from any kind of rational. Sorry. That happens sometimes. We're almost there. Oh, and you got the co-founder of Frontiers. Got the word doctor in front of his name, so therefore, my first two initials are DR2. It's Dana Ryan. My parents were smart. Below, list of organizing participants. So when you start looking at all of these participants, we're going to come back to that in a minute. They got a lot of participants. There's a lot of money sitting right there. World Economic Forum, United Nations, which is a military-industrial complex. World Economic Forum is just a bunch of weirdos that are hell-bent on disrupting everybody's ability to have any kind of a future by destroying everybody's future. The biggest weirdos on the planet is World Economic Forum, UN, and Frontier, as you'll see. Sustainable Development Solution Networks. They covered all the bases, these folks. Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories, that really got my interest. That's one of my specialties. Imperial College for London, the notorious scum of the earth. And Fusion for Energy, all got their little spots down there. We're the future. How come geothermal is not the future? Frontier expands its partnership with the World Economic Forum. And early confirmed speakers are listed on the Frontier Science House website. So one over there, of course. Here we go. Well, look at that. Isn't that interesting? There's a long list of them. We'll get through it right now. You talk about they refuse to acknowledge Fukushima happened or that the nuclear industry has any bad qualities when the nuclear industry is the reason we have so many illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries and illnesses. Excuse me. They're pretending they're on a building that don't exist, and the World Economic Forum is not worried about that. They're not concerned about the radioactive fallout. Davos is not concerned about the radioactive fallout. They're concerned about pretending at the cocktail parties. Because a lot of these people are actually compartmentalized, right? These speakers we're going to go through. The radioactive fallout actually happened. It was an incredible, unbelievable amount. We covered the entire planet over and over and over, and it's still hemorrhaging out of Japan today. When this model stops, this was modeled on an actual spike on documentation. When that stops, that's only 30 days. Do you really think that it stopped melting down after 30 days? And there's no other emissions on the planet that can cover the entire planet. Right, there's no other pollutant, I should say, on the planet, and nuclear is the worst pollutant. So Fukushima really happened. It really did. So we, in our humbleness, launched research expeditions from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska for 6 years. Very humble stuff. And we left no stones unturned. I was out there 4 to 5 months a year, busting my ass all day, every day, nonstop. And it didn't look like that typically. It looked like this. This was your typical day. That was the end of your typical day. Tide's changing, the waves are getting bigger. Even though you're on, this is on almost up by Alaska. And so we built this operation because we had the documentation that the world had changed post-Fukushima. And that got lifted of all the equations we've seen post-Fukushima on top of that, including the current, whatever it is you want to call that, global takeover in Davos. And there's all these researchers. Frontier supports all these researchers, but they don't support me or people like us. How come, I wonder? And we need an engine for this boat. This is our second year. Now we can't get out and do our research because Frontier is too busy supporting the people that are covering it up. It really happened. The harm was real, and I'm going to show it to you. And I hope you'll give me the courtesy of hearing me out. I've done this for 6 years. I think that means something. I've done it post-Fukushima, and I've done it knowing the documentation, knowing the radioactive fallout, and knowing the damage is going to be manifested, definitely on the shorelines. It really did melt down, despite the fact they covered those buildings up. They picked up 30 million one-ton bags, never stopped shipping food at the nuclear wasteland. How do you think that's going to play out? So from Vancouver, British Columbia, 4 to 5 months a year, the species to your left have disappeared. Here's what's left. But do you think for 1 second any of these people are aware of this? Do you think co-founder, CEO of Frontiers, Camilla, is aware of this or even gives a shit? Do you think that Frontier would fund a lowly, humble researcher like me? Of course not. Africa Academic of Science will not fund organizations like us that are doing the real work and showing the adverse effects of the most catastrophic event, an extinction event, as you're going to see. Cyprus Institute, Imperial College in London, which has no right to exist with the crimes they committed against humanity. The University of Artificial Intelligence, and the European Commission. The Institute for Climate Impact Research. Institute for Climate Impact Research. I wonder what the climate impact research for this is, sir? Do you got any idea what that? I'm sure you do, actually. I'll tell you what the impact is, and I'll show it to you, too, on top of that. It's an extinction event. The species are gone. But why are they gone? The radioactive plume covered the entire planet in 20 days. So you got gammas, alphas, neutrons, and betas, and cesium-137, which is a gamma, for instance, will pulse energy 600 feet. And in the environment, in the ecosystem, in the biosphere, it wipes out the microscopic creatures. If you're going to break a food chain, that's the best way to do it, for sure. And so you got gammas, alphas, neutrons, and betas, saturated the entire planet, the entire kilogram of every surface of the planet is incredibly saturated with possibilities of hundreds of millions of just iodine-129 alone. But you have all these different isotopes pulsing energy, gammas and alphas, neutrons and betas. When they hit each other, they don't mix. Gammas and alphas, neutrons and betas They'll ricochet off each other. Now they're traveling almost at the speed of light. When they hit each other, they change direction. There causes another effect, and that's called, we describe it as an X-ray, Bremsstrahlung effect. It's a German word that I probably just butchered. That effect wipes out the birds, the insects, the microscopic animals that breaks down the foliage in the litter, the biota. And you're talking about millions of microscopic species, creatures that live in harmony with bacteria and the fungus. The plants can't exist, trees can't exist, metals can't exist without the bacteria and fungus, which helps retain water and creates a nice, moist home for the microscopic animals, who breaks down the foliage in the litter and recycles the surface of the ocean, of the planet, of the landmass. They get wiped out by this stuff. And so now the earth, instead of sucking up water, it repels water because it's so dry, it's tinder dry. Water can't absorb in it after just a decade and a half. Now this has been going on for 80 years. These emissions from 1,000 fuel pools worldwide are poisoning your planet. The fuel pools are nuclear fuel pools. The reactor cores, when you take them out and put them in a fuel pool, they're still splitting atoms for millions of homes and businesses. Now there's no containment, and they're released directly into the environment up the tall, skinny stacks at the nuclear sites and nuclear dumps. And there's nothing on the planet with an autoimmune trigger that can defend against it. And when it's in the body of any species, and in the body of every species now, on a level that we've never even been able to imagine pre-Fukushima. And what happens is, no matter what kind of species it is, the body attacks the man-made anthropogenic radiation with white blood cells and eventually builds a sarcophagus around it. We call it a tumor. And the cancer epidemic started in the 70s after all that nuclear releases into the environment that was unmitigated, and all the dumping that was unmitigated. We set a course for an extinction event anyway. But now it's been bumped heavily. It's been what we call a spike, a pulse event from 36 reactor cores in Fukushima, Japan. Pretending it's not happening is not a solution. And that the people that now are going to make decisions are not going to make them based upon disinformation. They're going to refuse to acknowledge everything I'm showing. They're going to refuse to say, the Fission story is that never happened, but they're going to refuse to challenge that story because they can't be in the game if they challenge that story. And then Frontiers is not going to support people like me who's actually out there making a difference, showing the documentation, providing. They're going to bring in all of these people that are disconnected from everything I'm talking about, from how reality works. And think about when your landmass loses biota, which is what happened post-Fukushima, but it would have happened anyway because of the nuclear industry eventually. But that pulse event of 36 reactor cores melting down in 8 fuel pools at the top of 4 reactor buildings has sealed their fate. Those species to your left are exterminated, and I went up there for 6 years to see if they recovered. They didn't. And these people have no intentions of challenging the fake narrative with the truth, of course. That's suicide for them. Frontier can't do it. That'll be suicide for them. They're connected to the World Economic Forum now, and they're joined at the hip, so there's no way they're going to do it. The universities are the same people who sat in silence and let the world governments promote that they were on top of the building that don't even exist. The universities are the one who sold us out the quickest. Right? You got all these university heads down there that are going to bring their curriculum of these self-appointed leaders. These are the self-appointed leaders. Because now they have financial security, they have the media on their side. It's easy for them now to do whatever they like. They're totally secure. But the only reason you get to keep that is because you refuse to acknowledge that this is happening and that it happened because we allowed it to happen. We allowed the media to pretend they're on top of a building. We didn't call them out. None of these people would ever question those people. They'll acknowledge it, but they won't speak it out publicly. They won't support people like us who do all the field studies. These were difficult times, and we're losing time. I'm not getting younger, and I should be out there doing research when the weather is appropriate. I should be out there in the winter. I have the fleet. I don't have an outboard motor, and we can't get any foundations or anybody else to support us to get back out there and do the research. Any of these people could fund my operation, and it would not impact them whatsoever. They can do it through friends of theirs. They can do it through shell accounts. 100 ways they can do it. Help me out. And my PayPal link below, but they won't do it. It won't happen. I can guarantee you. You'll never hear me saying, "Holy shit, we got funded for a new motor." And one motor is not enough for my boat. I need 2 motors. What happens when one breaks down? You got an old man on the ocean by himself. But these people will ignore all of that. They'll ignore an extinction event. And as long as they get to play for their friends and families who don't know any better, they get to pretend they're the heroes. This is what they're doing right now. They're pretending the Global Fund, European Parliament, international organizations for standardization. I mean, how arrogant to try to set policies that affects 8 billion people and 8 billion people and 8 million species. What kind of hubris is it that tries to person? Because they were always headed to that position. A lot of these are compartmentalized, but not very many of them, I should say. Chief Executive Editor of Frontiers. Do you think he'll edit my research expeditions? Or do you think he'll follow up on all of these studies and acknowledge that the species were there in 2011 and then they weren't post-Fukushima? I went out there for years and years by myself and got the shit beat out of me nonstop. I've been hunted and hated and vilified and demonized and smeared, ostracized, and yet I still keep coming back, don't I? We have no budget whatsoever, but we're still struggling every day to do a moral and ethical thing. Not because it's easier, not because it's fun, but because it's supposed to be done and it needs to be done right. These research expeditions were brutal. I'm still hated today for trying to do a moral and ethical thing. And the reason that I'm hated is so that people like this can pretend they're good people, can pretend they got the high ground, can pretend that they're better than everybody else, that they can make the decisions for everybody worldwide by going to an organization's meeting and then bullying the rest of the planet because they're in a position to do it. And now that they have AI can do all the dirty work and robots can do the dirty work for them, it's just unconscionable that the research is not getting done. We're losing every species. 6 years of research expeditions. These people have no concept of field studies. They're paying academics to lie to us. They're not paying for people like me to go out there and show the truth. They're not helping. They're not funding it. They don't care about it. They're not looking at it. They're not researching it. When all the species are missing, and it used to look like that, when should you make a stand? When do you fight for your loved ones to have a future, for the species to have a future, or anybody else on this planet to have a future? Just because you're in a good position now don't mean that you can hide away from radioactive fallout, or your loved ones, or your friends, or your families, or your hopes, or your dreams. The species to your left were amazing. I was a commercial diver for a very long time, and I worked intimately in this environment every day. 6 hours a day on the ocean floor, so I know kind of a few things. And I know that Losing those species is an extinction event. In order to lose those species, you had to sterilize the ocean, like you sterilize the landmass with that radioactive fallout. And this is why you see, when you have lightning strikes, you have all these tinder dry foliage and litter that didn't break down, will wafer up and land 1,000 feet away, start another forest fire. And now the earth doesn't soak up water. When you have rain, what happens? You have flash floods. Where are you having it? Worldwide. How long have you been having it? Since Fukushima. When did all the whales start showing up emaciated? Since Fukushima. And what do we blame it on? We blame it on an imaginary blob, which is actually massive radioactive fallout. We call it a blob, blame it on your tin cans, your pop bottles. In fact, James Lucid over at YouTube, and I'll put a link in the description while you're listening, made a song about it I think is unbelievably appropriate. I'm sure, which I'll be right back.
The birds washed up, feathers torn, scientists mumble, eyes are worn, shake their heads, say what went wrong. Check the numbers, drag it along. They write their books, shake their hands, watch it sink into the sand. Call it heat, call it tide, call it anything but the crime. The blob don't burn, the blob don't kill, but the core still burn and the waste still spills. The blob don't kill, the blob don't burn, but the fuel still melts and the tides still turn. The blob don't burn, the blob don't kill, but the fish still starve and the bones lie still. The blob don't kill, the blob don't burn, but the truth stays buried where the dead things fill. 10 years gone, still no sound. Birds don't sing when the food runs out. They print their papers, paint the walls. Never once where the bodies fall. They write their books, shake their hands, watch it sink into the sand. Call it heat, call it tide, call it anything but the crime. They're puzzled, they're stunned, they say they don't know. Oh, what a show, well, what a show. They point to the sky, to the tides and the flow. Where did it go, where did it go? They'll blame the heat, they'll blame the waves, not the course, not the grave. They'll figure it out someday soon, someday soon, someday. The blob don't burn, the blob don't kill, but the core still burn and the waste still spills. The blob don't kill, the blob don't burn, but the fuel still melts and the tides still turn. The blob don't burn, the blob don't kill, but the fish still starve and the bones lie still. The blob don't kill, the blob don't burn, but the truth stays buried where the dead things fill. They'll figure it out someday soon, someday soon, someday. The truth stays buried.
Right, that's about the blob. This is what done it all, Dana. It wasn't radioactive fallout. It wasn't 36 reactor cores melting down. Not even melted down, Dana. The scientists, the journalists went to the buildings. They were on top of the building. It's okay, Dana. It's not. We're in real trouble. We better get our act together if nobody else is going to do it. I'm challenging everybody, the 100 scientific leaders, not experts, but leaders, And so, I'm not going to do a long show tonight. I'm just going to end it right at this. That's my challenge. If you're 100 leaders, if you're leaders, you'll find me, get hold of me, and let's do something good for this planet. Walk away from these people and stand behind me. And history will remember you forever. You go with them and history will hate you forever. I'm telling you the truth. I'm not lying to you. Is 100 scientific self-appointed leaders convening in Davos 2, shaping global decisions are they terrorism? Is that terrorism? No, I guarantee you it is. Terrorism is killing all the species and pretending you're saving them. That's terrorism. And when all the whales are emaciated, you wake up in the morning and you look in the mirror, hopefully you'll remember my voice. I'm still here. I'm still fighting. Still going to work every friggin' day. I don't fear anything on this planet. So I'll always be back. Despite all the threats and death threats and assaults and attacks and demonization, I still show up. Still go to war every day for those beautiful species. I know it's too late, but these pictures haunt me constantly. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody on the next show. We're going to end it with Rolling Stewardship Blues from the same artist. Have a good weekend. I'm going to pay attention to those guys and a lot of the nuclear stuff. We'll see you on Sunday, same time. Hugs for everybody. Have a great night and a great day tomorrow. We'll see you on the next one.
The big boss man said cleanup's done, signed a paper, shook hands, packed up and run. They cut the ribbon, took their prize, but the ground still burns and the river still cries. Said we got it sealed, it's locked up tight, but I see the cracks in the pale moonlight. Ain't no steel strong enough, no law so bold to hold back fire 1,000 years old. Lou Batty Byrne, they said he'd heal. Monday morning they closed the deal. Doctors talked, but the paycheck spoke, and the truth went up in a cloud of smoke. They called it safe, they called it sound. Now the waste runs deep, so they cut the ground. Another grave, another name, another worker lost to the same old game. Built a fence with signs so bright, said stay out, it ain't alright. But kids see fences like a dare. If it's so safe, what you hiding there? Ain't no guard to watch that gate, just a name on a file and expired date. Rust on the lock, dust in the key, and the poison sleeps where the world can't see. 10,000 years, that's the plan, but a budget cuts quicker than a government hand. 5-year checks, 10-year lies, ain't nobody left to hear the cries. Tell me who gon' stand, who gon' keep, when the stewards quit and the books go cheap, when the contracts break, when the watchdog's blind. That poison won't care about the ties that bind. Stack it high, tell them all it's safe, wave the good years by, move the dirt, mind. They call it cleanup, but I call it a joke. They keep the ledgers, but they lose the hope. Ain't no fix, just changing the shirt. Ain't no cure, just moving the dirt. Leaves just old plutonium, son. And the waste don't care when the money's gone.